RKW 104.5 The Zone on a snowy Friday morning in Nashville, Tennessee. Brad Hopkins, Kayla Anderson, Will Bowling, joined by our very good friend, Brent Hubbs of VolQuest's on 3 from Knoxville with lots to discuss on Rocky Top. Brent, good morning. Happy Friday. How are you?
Happy Friday. Good morning, guys. Hope everybody's doing well. Stay safe out there.
Thank you. Absolutely. You as well. Brent, of course, we got to start with Mike K. and Franklin. The next voice of the Vols. It feels full circle. We talked about it the day we heard the news about Bob Kessling's retirement, but I know you guys just had an awesome conversation, a great interview at VolQuest with Mike about this step and this process. Brent, I know that's someone you know very, very well, is a good friend of yours, and just a perfect fit for Tennessee fans of the Vol Network.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited for Tennessee fans. I'm excited for Mike. Obviously, everybody knows the relationship I've had with Bob Kessling for the last 26 years and what he's meant to me and what he'll always mean to me for the opportunities that he has given me, and I can never repay him for all those opportunities. You know, I met Mike 32 years ago, and I was a young communications major who was going to take a practicum and an internship and was on my way to do some TV production stuff, and along the way I fell in love with radio and reporting because of Mike. And I don't have a career of any kind without Mike Keith. And the years I spent working directly with him as my boss in the mid-'90s were the funnest, most challenging days of my career, challenging in a good way. He pushed me to get better. He made me uncomfortable. He taught me the business. He taught me how to create relationships with people, real relationships, and the significance of that. And as a result, I've been blessed with a career that I never dreamed possible and, quite frankly, don't deserve. And he's the biggest reason why. So I'm excited for him because having been around him as much as I have through the years, certainly working with him and our friendship afterwards, nobody loves Tennessee the way Mike loves Tennessee. And Tennessee's been, and Orange has been in his blood since he was born. And he grew up around it because his father absolutely loved Tennessee to the core. And if you read any quote, if you watch our interview that's on YouTube and on our site, you quickly understand how much he loves Tennessee.
No doubt about it. And you got to go do that at VolQuest.com. It is a great, great conversation. And Brent, it's cool, the opportunity that Mike had, and we'll talk with him in an hour here as well, but the opportunity he had to build the infrastructure from the ground up and the brand of Titans Radio. And in a lot of ways, Mike Keith is synonymous with football in the state of Tennessee in the two biggest ways, at the professional level and, of course, the Vols as well. And is one of us, right? I mean, one of us fans and Titans fans and Vols fans. And I know you guys are so thrilled. And the tradition, Brent, of the Vol Network and the four folks that have come before him and John Ward and Bob and Lindsey Nelson all the way back, in the early days, the tradition of the Vol Network, Brent, is something that will continue in very good hands.
Well, no doubt, but that tradition will be met with innovation, and things will be different. It'll be done Mike's way. He will, quote, thread the needle, as Danny White likes to say, between tradition and innovation. And I think that, again, I've got a pretty good window. I've had a pretty good window seat to Mike's career, and Mike has built everywhere he's gone and done something. He built Sports Talk in Knoxville into a franchise that still exists today. And he took Titans Radio when a lot of people said you couldn't make it a statewide brand and a statewide network, that they were just going to be a Nashville thing. And he turned Titans Radio into a statewide network that was its own successful entity that a lot of NFL networks tried to look at as a model, and he created it from ground zero up because he believed he could do it. He knew how to do it, and he did it. I mean, Titans Radio is a thing, and it's a thing because not just because of what Mike did in calling games on Sunday, but what Mike did 365 days out of the year to make Titans Radio what it is. And I think you saw the respect that the Titans organization has for Mike with what Miss Amy put out yesterday in her statement, the fact he's going to be in the Ring of Honor.
Pretty amazing, no doubt about it. Brent Hubbs, VolQuest, with us this morning on Ramon, Kalen, Will from the broadcast booth to the football field. Brent, a big commitment from Alabama receiver and Chattanooga product Amari Jefferson on Tuesday. What was this process like getting Amari in the mix, and how quickly, Brent, could he have an impact for Tennessee next season?
Well, he's coming off a hip injury where he had a minor hip procedure, but he says he's going to be cleared and ready to go for spring practice. That'll be huge if he can be a full-go participant in spring practice, because he's going to need that work to get adjusted to this offense, and he'll need that spring to put himself in the best situation he can to be a real factor early on for Tennessee next season. Amari's a guy Tennessee loved coming out of high school. Of course, he was originally committed to play baseball for Tony Vitello before football blew up, and he got all the football opportunities. But Tennessee wanted him very much coming out of high school. Those around Amari really were enamored with the thought of him going to Alabama and playing for Nick Saban. Amari almost took a late visit to Tennessee right before he signed with Alabama, and still had some Tennessee in his heart. Went to Alabama, and, of course, Nick Saban retires, and Amari was looking to come home. He wanted to be back at Tennessee. He wanted to be around friends. He wanted to be around the Tennessee program that he really liked coming out of high school anyway. And so it was a pretty simple process for him. It was, enter the portal, don't make it a big deal. Tennessee, are you interested? If you are, I'm coming. And that's essentially how that recruitment in the transfer portal went. It was not about a re-recruitment. It was real simple. I'm in the portal. I want to come home, and Tennessee said, come on, we'd love to have you.
Absolutely, Brent. And of the 9 players that actually are in the portal leaving the program, I'm probably most surprised about Squirrel White. I mean, especially for someone that has been so instrumental and pivotal in the Tennessee's offense. I guess Tennessee's loss is Florida State's gain, right?
Yeah, I mean, Squirrel's a productive player. He had a hard time staying healthy this year. But he's been a productive player at Tennessee. I think that he probably wanted quite a bit of value to stay, Brad, and probably put himself in a situation where may have overpriced himself a bit and decided he wanted to test the waters and see what was out there. I don't know what kind of, financial agreement he's got with Florida State and how much he's getting or anything like that. But I think he put himself in a position that he decided he needed to look around based on where Tennessee thought his value was, and he thought his value was, and that's the month of December in college football now.
Yeah, Amari Jefferson is not only the last choice that they're going to have as far as reloading a receiving core. There are probably some other names that we're going to be hearing about either through the transfer portal or recruiting that will be adding and giving them some depth in Rocky Top this year. Am I right?
Yeah, I would think that, they would like to certainly add another receiver in this cycle if they can. Now, the question is there somebody they like right now? We'll see. I mean, they haven't brought anybody on campus for a visit, but I think they're certainly kicking the tires at guys who are in the portal or are going in the portal. There's still opportunity for some guys to go in here as college football season will conclude 10 days from now, I guess. And then you got the spring cycle as well. And what does that look like? So, yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think Tennessee's still going to be active. They've got the USC transfer. They've had him on campus the last 24 hours, and Emmanuel Pagan, excuse me. And he's I think that's Tennessee, Oregon. He's going to go to Texas next. We'll see where that one goes from there. So I think Tennessee would like to have an offensive guard if they could get one that they really wanted, and certainly receiver. And then we'll see what they do on defense. They've looked at defensive linemen. Would they bring one in? If the right defensive back came online as a transfer, would they kick tires there? I think they would certainly look at those spots, and then running back as well. They could potentially do something, whether it's now or in the spring cycle. So I think you're always looking. I don't think they're taking just to take a body. It's going to be the right fit, but they're certainly looking for potential right fits.
Brent Hubbs, our good friend of VolQuest, joining us as he does every Friday here on RK-Dub. Brent, what's the latest with coaches in terms of who is looking to stay at this point and who might still be on the move?
Well, Tim Banks, strength coach Kurt Schmidt, special teams coordinator Mike Eckler, and secondary coach Willie Martinez are all on contracts that expire at the end of this month. And so it's either new contracts for them or moving on. And Tim Banks' name has been talked about with the Miami job. And as we talked about last week, he had no interest there. He was linked with the Clemson job early on. I don't think there's any real movement there with Banks or Clemson. So I think Tim Banks is going to be back when it's all said and done. And I think that he's had an opportunity from a contract standpoint to sign. I think they're trying to get through all of dotting the I's and crossing the T's, and we'll see if they get that one to the finish line. It feels like they will. Eckler's name has been linked to a special teams opening at Nebraska, and Mike is originally from Nebraska. That one makes total sense. But how interested is Matt Rule, Nebraska's head coach, in Mike Eckler? That's the uncertainty right now. And talking to some Nebraska folks the last few days, they are aware that Eckler would have interest in that job. They're just not sure exactly what direction Rule wants to go with that position at this point in time. Is he going to hire a full-time special teams coordinator? Is he going to hire a position coach and then kind of divide up special teams duties? That's what everybody's trying to figure out with that one. Willie Martinez, I think, will probably be back on another, for another year. He was on a one-year deal this past year. He's been on a one-year deal for the last couple of seasons. I don't think he's ready to retire. His defensive backs played well. It feels like he'll be back. And Kurt Schmidt, the strength coach, has been around Josh Heupel for a long, long time. I think there's a real comfort level there. If you're going to make a change at strength coach, to me, you would have already done it because your players are coming back to town in 11 days to start the winter off season. So I think you would have already had that situation rectified if you were going to make some kind of change there. So watching Eckler and Nebraska, that's the one that could potentially develop into something. At least that's what it feels like right now.
Hubs, do you feel like with assistants and coordinators nowadays in this, type of college football atmosphere, do you think they're more likely to kind of stick with what they're doing until a real true fit opening, happens? Because I do feel like, it's obviously a win. Tim Banks, if he does come back, does it change anything for them like it has for the players?
That's a great question. And I think there's a couple of ways to look at it. One, if you're talking about a coordinator seeking a head coaching job, you're not going to be a coordinator who takes the first job that comes along, because it's no longer about can I win in that conference. You have to look really deep at the resources. Can we compete in the NIL world that we're dealing with right now? Secondly, if I'm a coordinator and I'm making, $1.5, $2 million a year, do I really want to go be a head coach? Okay, how many head coaching jobs am I going to get to start my career? Let's look at Tim Banks. Let's say Tim Banks makes between 1.5 and 2 next year as a coordinator. Well, where's he going to go get a head coaching job that he makes more money than that? So are you smarter to stay and make that money and not have to deal with some of the CEO things that a head coach is having to deal with? Yeah, I think that's the case. On the flip side of that, if you're a university and an athletics director, do you feel like the easier way to fix your program is invest in the roster financially to get the head coach better players around him, and then make a move if you need to get his staff right? Because if you get rid of a head coach, in a lot of cases you're looking at $25 to $50 million buyouts.
Sure.
On top of the fact that you're now putting $22 million into rev share as well. That's a new expense. So from a cost standpoint, is it better to, quote, fix the head coach's staff and roster as opposed to getting rid of the head coach and paying the big buyout money? I think that's a new dynamic that we're going to keep a close eye on in college football, in particular, with how much there is of head coaching movement versus a staff movement moving forward because of the amount of money that's being spent.
Great insight, as always, from VolQuest's Brent Hubbs, who joins us here Friday mornings on Ramon, Kayla, and Will. Brent, I'm really fascinated by Boo Carter's role in this Tennessee roster next season, and it feels like we kind of put that on the back burner, and it was Mike Matthews, and it was Amari Jefferson, and some of these other targets. But how real do you think Boo Carter's role in Tennessee's offense is as of today for next season, and how much of that still is remain to be seen and remain to kind of be written based on the way practice and the spring and the summer kind of goes for him?
Well, I think the focus became Mike Matthews and Amari Jefferson because of the amount of bodies they lost at the receiver position. I don't think anything has changed internally and what they can do with Boo Carter, what they would like to try to do with Boo Carter and the ball in his hands. Now, he's not going to play every snap like Travis Hunter did at Colorado. And I know a lot of people have tried to make that comparison. I don't see that being the case in terms of the volume of snaps. So then the question becomes, what all can Boo Carter handle mentally? What's the workload that he can handle? Can he continue growing in this defense to making the calls he has to make in the back end and all the adjustments you have to make and still learn offensively what to do? So I think the depth of what Boo Carter does offensively is largely due to where Boo Carter is in terms of his commitment to learn all of it. Are you going to be a guy who you run some jet sweeps to and maybe throw a wide receiver screen to every now and then? Are you going to be a guy who's got a real route tree and a real specialized package that has greater depth to it? I think that's unknown, Will, until we get through spring practice and until you really understand and know where all Carter's commitment is to learning all of that. Because he can't just say, hey, throw me the ball and let me go run around. That's not what this is going to be about. To be as big of a factor on offense as he wants to be, his commitment level off the field to learning the offense and as much of it as he can has to be significant, and that's what we'll find out in the coming months. Tennessee would love to use him a great deal on offense.
Brent, on the way out, I feel bad for Tennessee's basketball players and probably how rough their practices were after their trip to Gainesville earlier this week. What a way to get your first loss, Brent, and one of the worst shooting performances that the Vols have had under Rick Barnes. What have you heard about the response since that game? And I know Rick Barnes, Brent, might kind of be happy, not with the result, but the opportunity he has to kind of correct some things and get his team to lock back in a different way after that performance.
Well, I mean, listen, that team was never going to go undefeated.
Right.
Okay. But now the question that you have to look at is, how do you respond to being uncompetitive, and why were you uncompetitive? I was really interested to hear Rick Barnes and see Rick Barnes when he met the media before they left town to go to Texas, and they got out early because of the weather. Say that when he watched the tape, it wasn't like it was a lack of effort, like guys were just not doing anything. It was some play that wasn't very smart in terms of not running the offense and not doing the things that you wanted to do and settling for jump shots. But he didn't think it was just a lack of effort. So now it's about, how do you bounce back? How do you correct it? And how do you get tougher? Because Florida got in your grill. I mean, they just got up in your dish and out-muscled you and out-toughed you. And Barnes, I don't think liked it, but certainly sees it as something that he can use as a real defining moment for this team. We'll find out a lot about their leadership, how they respond, Saturday when they play against Texas. And, I think Barnes using it, to their benefit or to his benefit, if you will. I'll say this, no days are easy days on the practice floor with Rick Barnes. Right. If you win by 40 or you lose by 40, every day is a hard day of practice. That's the only way he knows how to coach. So I don't know that it was dramatically different on the floor, but they've certainly been challenged with their physicality, their manhood, whatever you want to say. They've been challenged to be a physical team because, as he's told his team, John Calipari talked about, well, if you're going to play Tennessee, you better strap it on because you're going to play a bunch of grown men. And his response to his team was, Florida didn't see grown men because you guys didn't play with the physicality you needed to play with. That'll be interesting to watch tomorrow.
Brent Hubbs of VolQuest at On 3, our guest Friday mornings at 7:20 here on RKW. Again, I cannot endorse enough the interview Brent did with the VOT V, I guess we call him now, Mike Keith, who's going to join us in an hour as well. Excellent stuff at VolQuest.com. Always good to catch up with you, Brent. Thank you, sir. See you, B.
Thanks. Y'all be safe
thank you.
And have a great weekend. Thanks.
Yes, sir. You as well. There's Brent Hubbs here with us talking Vols this morning, brought to you by Ascend Federal Credit Union, your financial partner for every stage of life. UT versus Tex tomorrow night in men's basketball.
Yeah,
that's awesome, especially for Rick to go back to a place that he spent 17 seasons at. Maybe this wasn't a bad thing that happened. He got thumped by Florida to kind of be more refocused to go back down to the new digs.
His conference.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So. I can tell you firsthand now, the only time Rick Barnes is not on edge at a Tennessee practice is when he's doing the pre-broadcast meeting with the play-by-play and color guy during shoot-around on the morning of the game. He's more laid back talking to us there, and I think that's about the only time that ever happens. 615-737-1045. Some major college football news came down yesterday. We've talked a lot about quarterbacks who should just get paid in NIL instead of being 4th or 5th round picks. Well, one of those quarterbacks in Georgia's Carson Beck took everyone's advice. What's next for the Georgia signal caller? We'll talk about that next.